Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for coming, and thank you, Wei, for making this all possible, and your opening your house to me to talk about something that's not really on very many people's minds, which is the what I would call the principal civilization of the New World. And what I mean by a civilization, people generally think of a civilization as something that has writing, monumental architecture, a concept of history and its documentation, large populations organized by social class or stratigraphy, and specialization, that not everybody does the same thing. And of course, the Mayas and their Mesoamerican cousins and ancestors are is really the only place in the Americas in which has all of these things, including not only writing, but a numerology, a form of math, and a very accurate astronomy, all of which was developed. The earliest numerological evidence of this system is about 1600 BC. So it's not as old as the Assyrians or early Egypt or the Indus River Valley, but it's not too far behind, and it did have to rely on the domestication of a much more complex carbohydrate called corn or maize, rather than rice or wheat or the other ones of the old world. But my motivation in talking about this is in part because I find myself in an unusual situation of being both a scholar of things Mesoamerican and Maya, and I will skip the credentials, except to say that I'm still the editor for the Library of Congress on anything that's written about native people of Mexico and Central America, and have been for some decades now. But there's a lot of other things, 50 publications in a book. So I have dedicated my scholarly life to the study of Mesoamerica and the Maya in particular. But I've, at the same time, and this was not at all my plan, I also, back in 1977, through a series of seeming accidents, ended up becoming initiated as a Maya calendar diviner. And what that means is something of what we're going to talk about today. And do feel free to ask questions. This is not like one of those formal lectures where I have to say everything and then have people ask questions later. And I recognize that there is a challenge of both complexity and our general lack of familiarity with this particular culture. And I would have to say that part of the reason we don't know more about it, even though it is the high culture of the Americas, and I should add, most of us don't know very much about any of the indigenous cultures of this part of the world, largely because we've imported worldviews from wherever we have come, and also, although none of us may subscribe to it ourselves, there has been a long historical project of silencing and diminishing and relegating to savagery and barbarism the cultures of the New World as part of a colonial project. So it's been a lot harder for people to and it has taken longer, and it has been more recent to uncover some of the mysteries of the Maya culture as, say, compared to Egypt or Sumer or other early cultures, in part because to give legitimacy to this culture is to not only question the legitimacy of conquest, but also it puts some focus on the surviving population, which, unlike the tiny indigenous population in the United States, the Maya population is not small. We more or less, as a measure of thumb, there's about 10 million Maya speakers of 28 Maya languages today. So it's not this small group of people relegated to the unpleasant corners of the real estate as much of it is in the US, but it's in fact a major population. In Guatemala, it's the dominant population. There are more Mayas than there are non-Mayas in Guatemala. Notwithstanding the fact that they still do not have much in the way of social or political power. Be that as it may, the fact is, even though there was a very powerful and sustained effort to eradicate evidence of the Maya civilization by its conquerors, there are people today who continue with aspects of that ancient tradition. And it is one aspect of that ancient tradition that I was initiated into, and that has to do with a calendar that is not the calendar that is used for measuring a solar year. The Mayas had their version of that, as in the Aztecs and other Mesoamericans. Their calendar, solar calendar, was a month of 20 days, and there were 18 of them, and then they had 5 what they called lost days to make 365. But along with that, and at least as old and perhaps even older, was a calendar that in the literature is usually called the sacred Maya calendar. And that calendar has 260 days. And it is that calendar that is the basis of a very still alive tradition today, but which clearly was present at the time of the Spanish and much earlier, and that is the use of that calendar for divination. And I have before me a recognizable to any Maya diviner in Guatemala, they would recognize immediately that this is a divining table. Their tables might be a little more rickety than this, and not as comfortable a chair, but the idea of the table and the chair, in fact, just saying, do you have the table and the chair, would be a polite metaphor to, is there a diviner in the house? Even though, of course, everybody has tables and chairs, but when you say, do you have the table and the chair, it means, does someone here know how to divine? So, a little more about my motivations. I'm motivated in part because very little, even today, of our society appreciates that there is a New World civilization, and I have the sort of temerity to think that, like Chief Seattle once said, if we don't really know the civilization of where we are, then we're still all kind of immigrants. We haven't really settled in until we know at least something about the cultures that arose where we actually live. In essence, we become real Americans when we learn something about the cultures that arose here. I'm sure lots of people can disagree with me about this, but such is the nature of being a missionary, right? So, and the wonderful thing about the Mayan belief system is they do not believe that it should conflict with other belief systems. It should be added on. Very much as the Mayas took the Olmecs and added them on, and then they were influenced by the Teotihuacan people. We don't know even who they were, but they had a strong influence on the Mayas. And then by the time the Spanish showed up, the Mayas were also very influenced by the Aztecs, or the Nahuatl culture. And in fact, many terms, even geographic terms, which are usually conservative, they had Nahuatl names for. And the elites in their kingly courts, amongst the Quiche Maya and the Cachiquel Maya and the Tzutuil Maya and the Mopan Maya, the elites spoke Nahuatl as well as their Maya language, in the same way that the czars spoke French, even though, of course, their native language was Russian. So the Maya culture is a very adaptable and flexible one, in that sense that to add knowledge of how they view the world is not to take away not other ways of knowing. It's to add something new. So one day when I was sitting with my teacher and we were hearing over a loudspeaker an evangelical Protestant who had learned his approach to religiosity from an American missionary, he said, "You Americans come down here to try to convince us to follow your ways. Why don't you go back and teach them a little bit about how we do things?" And so here, now I'm retired from being a college professor after 40-something years of doing that. So I am fulfilling my teacher's promise. In fact, he was absolutely sure. He said, when you're done doing what you think you're supposed to do in your life, then you come back to the table and the chair. So here I am at the table and the chair. You'll pardon me if I take a look at my notes from time to time. Yeah, I covered my motivations. One of the things that is interesting about the Maya civilization, starting around maybe 200 or 300 BC, and going through ups and downs all the way to the present time, is that their system of codifying and understanding the world is very much based on what nowadays they call biomimicry. It is imitating things that are found in nature. Now, one could say that to some degree of all cultures, when we talk about very basic things like numbers, time, space, basic things. I know there's a theory, for example, that the reason why 12 became a very important counting system back in Babylonian times, for example, was because you can count with your thumb 12 finger joints in your hands. And it allows for a kind of an abacus on your hands, right? So, but the Mayas chose a different one that's associated with the fact that the Mayas live in a tropical environment, and therefore covering their toes was not something that they did. Even the most elaborate classic Maya stela, statue of a ruler like Pakal II in Palenque, shows his toes. He's wearing very fancy sandals, but nonetheless, his toes are exposed, because we're talking about a society that developed a numerology based not on 10 and not on 12, but on 20. So it's a base 20 culture. 10 fingers and 10 toes. Since generally they didn't sit on derivatives of thrones, but on rather low things, they had their toes readily available when needing to count. But also because in their culture, numbers connect to a lot of other parts of their symbolism. So, for example, the body itself is considered an analog to what they call the holy earth, which we might call the biome or the ecosystem. The holy earth is the part of the earth that's lower than things like clouds or the sky that we can't reach, but above sterile rock. It's where the life action is, between rain and bedrock, basically. That's the holy earth. And also, in opposition to which the West often focuses on its religiosity, religiosity is not removed from your daily life. So it's some place you go on a Sunday morning in a fancy house of God, but the religiosity is spread out into all of your time and in all of your places, because the focus is less on the creator and more on the created, on creation. In fact, in general, the Mayas think the idea of addressing or even conceptualizing the deity as some fixed character, like an old guy in a chair with a beard in the sky, is utterly blasphemous. And human hubris to think that we should know the nature of the details of God. However, we can know God through creation, through what God has created. And so their focus is really on creation more than the creator, and on bringing nature into their cultural world, not walling it out, as in the Civitas walled city. And there are some very concrete material reasons for this. Many of the early civilizations in the West were able to coerce their population. Take, for example, the cities of Mesopotamia, whereas if you didn't go along with the state, they turned your water off because it was a hydraulic, despotic system. The Mayas and most of Mesoamerica had little in the way of, there was some irrigation, some drainage, but by and large, their societies, their city-states were made up of yeoman farmers. That is to say, corn farmers that if they didn't like what the polity was doing, they could pull up stakes, literally, and go farm somewhere else. And in fact, in the times just before the conquest, we had some good documentation that one of the allies of the Quiche at one point said, "We don't like that you're treating the people, some of the people you've captured better than you're treating us," and they split with them. And they couldn't get them to come back because they were able to have their material base replicated in another place. And I should point out that corn farming is an extremely efficient system of agriculture. If you look at how much corn you get from one corn seed as compared to one rice seed or one wheat seed or one barley seed, it's way, way, way more. We're talking 200 or 300 seeds for one seed. And it grows in almost any environment except for extreme cold or extreme dry. I mean, the Hopis grow corn in the Southwest desert. So it grows everywhere. It's highly productive. And in a place where you have a distinct rainy season and dry season, which is what defines Mesoamerica, very strong rains and then 6 months of almost no rain, you can store it. And if you can store your food, then you can do other things, like build a civilization. because you have all your food done and you still got 6 months left to do other things. I think where I was living in 110 days, and that was it for your agriculture. The rest of the time, you could do other things. So that was an ideal situation to develop a civilization. So now my big challenge in even talking about this subject is that it's not only complex, but it's unfamiliar. Now, when I hold this up, which I got in a thrift store, even though it's damaged, most of you probably know what this is, right? Or what this symbolizes. Anybody?
Fish?
Double fish?
Double fish. What's double fish?
Pisces.
Thank you. Pisces, right? This is the symbol that Pisces, that is in astrology, we have 12 months. And if you're born in, what is it, February, March, late February, early March, like Judy is, then you're a Pisces. So my point is, with very little excavation of most of us here, if we weren't born and raised in China, we would know what this means without me having to say much about it, right? Whereas the things I'm wearing here, who knows what they mean, because they're not a familiar symbolism to us. And that starts with the idea of having two calendars, right? Not just one. And that one of those calendars has two distinct but related functions. One of the functions is to predict when a baby is due. And the other function is to chart your destiny, your future. And the Maya and Mesoamerican concept, Aztecs had it, Zapotecs, the Mixtecs, all the Tecs, is that the day in which a woman misses her period is more or less 260 days from when she's likely to have the child. Now, why would it be important to have a calendar that charts and measures birth? Ladies?
It's new life.
Well, but it's more than that. I would have to say it bestows differential reproductive success, which is a fancy way of saying knowing when your baby is due makes it more likely that mother and child will survive. And particularly so the way this calendar works, because, and here I'm going to get a little numerological, so hold on to your hats. This calendar of 260 days is 20 days with 13 numbers running alongside. So after 13 days, the 14th day is 1 again, right? And these two numbers run, or these two, the 20 and the 13 run endlessly. There's no leap years, there's no variation in the numbers, and it's probably been the same for at least 3,000 years, maybe longer. So, and why is that? How does that work? Well, do you remember the concept of prime back from high school math? Well, while the Sumerians loved 60 because you could multiply all sorts of things into it, Mayas chose 20 and 13 in part because they're prime vis-a-vis each other, which means you get one combination of the number and the name until you get all the numbers and all the names. So if today, for example, is 6 dog, the next occurrence of 6 dog will be 260 days from now. And if we hold constant for dog and let the numbers go by, it's 1 dog, 8 dog, 2 dog, 9 dog, 3 dog, 10 dog, 4 dog, 11 dog, 5 dog, 12 dog, 6 dog, 13 dog, 7 dog, 1 dog. Yes?
How is 20 a prime number?
Vis-a-vis 13. They can't multiply into each other.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they're prime vis-a-vis each other, which means you will only get 6 dog once until you've gotten all the other numbers and all the other names. And then you come back to 6 dog again. So, in fact, I know that in 40 days, because every 40 days it goes up 1 number, I know that in 40 days it's going to be 7 dog. And in 40 more days it's going to be 8 dog. Now, why is this important to birth? Well, if you miss your period on 6 dog, and you know you're due the next 6 dog, when are you due to go to the sweat bath so that the midwives can make sure that your child is in presentation position? Or if not, that they practice external version to make sure that your child is in the right position. It needs to be 40 days before your due date. It can't be 20 days, that's too late. And it can't be 60 days, that's too early. Too early and the child can still move. Too late and you can't move the child. So it has to be this 40 days before. And this calendar lends itself to that because if you miss your period on 6 dog, 5 dog is when you got to find the midwife. And go to the sweat and make sure your child is in the right position. I have witnessed this many, many times in contemporary Maya society. Because the man of the house was the diviner where I lived, and his wife was a midwife. And she was always asking him, which day, when is 6 dog coming up? Well, it's 5 dog now. Oh my God, I got to go get my client right now because she's due in 40 days. So one of the functions of this calendar, and if you pick up a book like the Mayas and Aztec books, I was looking there, they still are hedging their bets by saying it's just one theory. But none of the other theories, there are many other theories about the origins of the 260-day calendar, the only explanation for its origin that really makes any sense at all is as a birthing calendar. But as most of the famous Mayanists are men, they're really having a hard time accepting this. Because it's hard for them to think that the most sacred calendar actually comes from the female womb. But it makes perfect Maya conceptual sense because the Mayas are dualists. They love to have complementary opposite things. So if you have a calendar for corn, what is corn? Corn is food. Corn is the basis of production, right? All other things in the material world where we produce come from corn, including building your buildings or whatever else. You've got to have your tortillas. In fact, the word for corn and the word for the dough, the word for food and the word for dough or the corn dough are the same word. So you have to have production. What is the other thing you need equally if you're going to have a society? You have to have reproduction, right? So you have to have a solar calendar to measure your production, right? To know when to plant, when to harvest, and all those things. And then you have to have a baby calendar, a birthing calendar for reproduction. And it's very easy to see why once somebody developed this calendar, everybody around ends up developing it because the people who have it are going to have more children and more mothers survive than the ones who don't. Right? It's very biological. This is one of the reasons why many scholars reject this as the origins of the Maya calendar, because it's too biological. It's so, and especially having to do with women and women's biology. But if you look at their division of labor, where men do corn and women do the household and the babies and the house administration and so on and so forth, it makes perfect sense that there's going to be two parallel calendars. And I should add, parenthetically, when those two calendars cross and perfectly match, happens once every 52 years. So the Aztec and Maya century in ancient times was a 52-year period. In fact, the maguey that makes your tequila, that in English is one of the names for it, is the century plant. Translated from the century in Spanish, of course, it's not a century, it's 52 years. And in fact, at least the traditional tequila plant flowers after 52 years. So there are lots of analogs on the ground and also in the stars with the calendric calculus, but its origins come from fingers and toes. And where does the 13 come from? Well, you need to have some multiple, prime multiple with 20 to get to 260, and no other number does that. But I should add that when I was living with them, they pointed out there are 13 days of the visible moon out of the 15 days, other than the full moon, which they don't count. And there's portions of 13 lunations in a year. Not all of 13, but more than 12. And for the Maya, if you enter into a new cycle, you count that cycle. You don't reject it. So a lunation is 29 and a half days. Do the math. There are portions of 13 lunations in every year. So 13 is a numerology that they see like the moon waxes and wanes, that it starts out being new and young and beginning, goes through its high point of 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then it trails off, and 13 is considered to be old, and in some situations ancient, or even tuckered out, weak, because it's so old. But wise, as the old people are. So the other function of this 260-day calendar, but based on the whole notion that the day in which your mom doesn't bleed and therefore the blood is retained, that you come out 260 days later, the day that you're born, your birthday, as we call it, is considered determinative of your life fate. In the same way that we might think that being born a Pisces is going to make you a Pisces all your life, they believe that if you're born on the dog day, you're going to be a dog person all your life. It's a characteristic that you will have. And I should add, this moves over into something else that's extremely hard for us in the West to wrap our heads around, and that is the idea that time is not a constant, or as we often refer to it, is a commodity, something that we can save, something that we can lose, something we can waste. But always, a tick-tock on Monday is a tick-tock on Tuesday, is a tick-tock on Wednesday. It's the same for us. And we have little machines to remind us, a smart-ass phone, a watch, something that tells us that today at 2 o'clock is the same time as yesterday at 2 o'clock. And the Maya way of viewing time does not agree with this at all. That from their standpoint, in the same way that people born on different days have different personalities, the different days have different personalities. So it's not just that we have different personalities. Time itself has different personalities. How many personalities does it have? 20 personalities, right? And each one is symbolized by an animal or some cluster of related meanings. So the first thing I had to do as a calendar diviner is learn what are the characteristics of the 20 days. So let us start with today. What is today in the Mayan calendar?
Dog.
Dog. It happens to be 6 dog. Right? So what are characteristics of dogs?
Loyalty.
They're loyal. What else?
Curious.
They're curious.
Keen smell senses.
Keen senses, smell and hearing, and actually touch too, because they can sense earthquakes before humans can, based
Good
on
defenders.
Huh?
Good defenders.
Good defenders. Yep. They run.
Protector.
Protector. They're sociable in a hierarchy of dogs, at least traditionally. We isolate dogs as individuals, but they run naturally in packs. So they have their little hierarchy.
Man's best friend.
Yes. Except, of course, that they're also a bit promiscuous. Right? They do screw in the street. So all of these characteristics, and one more that the Romans and Greeks would have identified with, because there are companions, they also may accompany us from this world to the next. Right? So there's a lot of symbolism in the ancient Maya about a dog in the underworld, because he's guiding us to go to the right place after we've passed on. So all of those characteristics, or at least some of them, are in someone who's born on the dog day. And they also pertain to today, because today is a dog day. Now, what kind of dog day is it? Well, it could be one of 13 possible dog days, right? The 1 dog day, the 2 dog day, the 3 dog day, the 4 dog day, the 5 dog day, or today's the 6 dog day. So 6 is a number. You'll just kind of have to take my word for it on it. 6 is a feminine day, and so it would indicate all those dogginess things more in the feminine side of things than the masculine, or the night side as opposed to the day side. So on 6 dog, the strength of dog power will increase as it gets later in the day. So as the male tends to dominate earlier in the day, and as it gets later, more towards night, it gets more feminine in their view. And what else? So it would also signal, pay attention to your dreams tonight in terms of doggy things going on. And don't worry if you find yourself, having sex with somebody that you were not planning to in your dreams, because that's just the doggy effect. Or going hunting for something that you didn't know you wanted to hunt, or that you didn't even know was missing. Or that in your dream you find something that was lost and then you go and find that it's really there. Those are all doggy impacts. With sunset, because the influence of the next day also begins as soon as it gets dark, we start to slowly transition out of dog and into monkey. And monkey has a bunch of particular qualities. Monkeys are like humans, but without reflection. So they think and go right to it. Used to have a friend in Guatemala who had a pet monkey, spider monkey. And anytime somebody came in worrying about something, that monkey went right to it. So this German guy with a real fancy camera comes into the restaurant we're in. That monkey went right for the camera lens. Got some shit and went right for the camera lens. No thinking involved. Just he intuited immediately. That was where it was. And this is why the monkey day is considered a shamanic day, because it's knowing without thinking. It's that instant knowing that's very monkey-like. Monkey is also a day for play. It's a dancey day, and it's a day for wrapping things up, because the word for monkey butts is also a metaphor for thread, winding up things, tying things up, finishing up things. So I won't go into all of the meanings of all of the days. We'd be here all day. But the point is that for them, time is a lot more colorful or meaningful or robust because it isn't all the same. And so, and it also takes a little pressure off you if you're on, if you're in the dog day and you find yourself staring licentiously at someone, and then say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And then you go, oh, but it's dog day. Then you're a little off the hook for your behavior because your behavior is being influenced by the day. Now, of course, if you live in a society in which everyone embraces this, you can see how this gets positively reinforced, because everybody's in the dog day today, and everybody's going to be in monkey day tomorrow. 7 monkey, which is also a feminine, but that number has other qualities as well. So on one hand, you could say that the 260-day calendar is a very mundane calculator for babies, right? It's just, we need to know when babies are coming, and we need to know a little beforehand so we can prep mama so that we can, they don't have cesareans in the campo in Guatemala. You have to be sure the baby's in presentation position. And these midwives that I interviewed and had my female students work with, they knew the interior geography of women very well. And they knew exactly how to move them. Now, they are helped. That is one very strong muscle. But they're very helped by the fact that they have this sweat bath where they can direct heat to a very specific place, like the uterus to the womb, in order to relax that muscle to be able to move the child. All of this sounds very mundane and mechanical, right? But you can imagine that on the basis of that calendar, they also thought of this as a calendar of your fate, since the first 260-day round is what brought you from start to finish as a child, as a fetus. From then on, you're in a solar calendar, where I'm 72 years in the solar calendar, but they also counted how many gestational years you were. And that's your sort of inner birthday, your secret birthday, because it tells about your inner essential character. So I think I added up, I'm 101 gestational years old. And until the conquest, people kept track of both. How many solar years old you were, but also how many gestational years. And in many cases, they erected a little stone every 260 days in their altar for each child. And that became the basis of erecting these big, huge stones in that classic Maya for their rulers. And you always have on those rulers stelas. There's these big stone statuaries in which the ruler is carved. You always have their birthday. And scholars used to think, well, that's nice having their birthday and the death day. The death day is nowhere near as important as the birthday. And I know that from this, that in fact, the day that ruler was born tells everybody in that city-state a whole lot about that ruler's character, because he was born on the dog day, or whatever day he was born on. There was, in fact, a Quiche ruler who was called Three Dog. And he probably had lots of dog-like characters. He did have a lot of wives. So, in any case, the thing that, yes, go ahead.
So of the 20 days,
Hmm.
you said 13 were dog days?
No. There's 20 days
Yeah.
and 13 numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are numbers,
Mhm.
and the days are days. So the 14th day of a calendar goes back to 1.
Yes.
So because there's 20 days, but only 13 numbers.
So
So,
which are the characteristics of each day?
well, there are 20 days,
Yes.
and then the numbers are like modifiers of that characteristic.
Mhm.
So the dog day is all those things we talked about a dog having, but it's 6 dog, so those characteristics are going to be more on the feminine side because it's 6. If it were 8, it would be more on the masculine side of this. If it was 13, it would already be ancient old influences. If it were 1, it would be brand new influences. But those are kind of like modifiers of the 20 days, the numbers. They just sort of give the intensity or the gender, the intensity, the earliness, the lateness, the power of it. So no one is ever initiated on one monkey or one deer, the 2 days that shamans are initiated. They're always initiated on an 8 day because that's considered the most powerful day. Now, I've known of some female shamans who are initiated on the 7 day because that's a more feminine one. Most female shamans only do their shamanism or their healing and divination for other shamans. So there are far fewer female shamans, but they're more powerful because they only shamanize shamans. Does that make sense? And the Mayas don't think gender is a fixed thing. They think as children we are all one gender. And then gender emerges as we get older. And then it peaks in our peak reproductive years. And then we begin to lose gender as we get old. And then when we're very old, we are almost genderless. That men's voices get higher and women get little beards, and everybody, the males and the females, are less apart. So they don't think of gender as stable. They think it is like a plant. It grows up and flowers, and then it recedes again. And that relates to their numbers. So, yes?
An example, why don't you give another day and then with the numbers so besides the dog day, another day name, and then that might explain.
Well, the one that I was most struggled with, and it was the day of my initiation, is the deer day. I got why monkeys are shamanic. That was really clear to me. They're intuitive, they're quick, they're like pre-people. They're like our essence without all of this reflective stuff. Right? They're tricky. And shamanism is involved with high-level trickery, tricking you for your own good. But deer, what's with the deer? Growing up with deer, they just seem like skittish animals that you could almost never see. But I realized, and it's helped me living here with deer around, in fact, that deer are extremely time-oriented. So when a group of deer come in to feed on my lawn at 8, they better be out by 9, because the next group that comes in gets really irritated if they haven't left yet. In fact, sometimes the doe will come in and kick the previous group out, literally kick them out. So they have an internal clock. Oh, the Maya love that, right? So they also have really good memory of, you take one little piece of space and change it around, and they're noticing it. If I park the car in a different place relative to the lawn, they're all like, why is that there? So they're very spatially aware. And I learned through doing some research on deer that they have 3 times the ability of humans to see motion. So they're extremely tuned in to small motions. So I think their sacred nature in part comes from that. It also comes from the idea of blood sacrifice. Now, a lot of the way in which the West dismissed Mesoamerican cultures, and the Aztecs in particular, is because they practiced human sacrifice. The Mayas today do not practice human sacrifice, but they do sacrifice chickens and sometimes some other animals. And this is because while they had gold and silver and jade and other precious and semi-precious stones, none of those things in their view were as valuable as one thing: blood. Blood was considered the most valuable thing in the world. Why? Because they saw in blood the essence of life. Why? Because if you poke a hole in somebody and the blood all comes out, they die. So the blood is the essential life giver inside of the body. The Mayan rulers, in order to get themselves in a state of mind to get in a religious state and channel their own ancestors, would bleed themselves. Men from their penises and women from their tongues, also their armpits. And this was considered feeding the most valuable thing we have to our deity. And while to us it may sound gruesome, to them it made perfect sense that you offer that which is most valuable. And I remember a development project that was being done while I was living there by an aid agency, Save the Children, I think. They built a model house to show the local people how to build a house that wouldn't fall down in an earthquake. But unfortunately, they didn't pay the $1.10 or whatever it was for a shaman to come and sacrifice a chicken in the center of where the house was going to be built, to ask the earth permission to have the house built. And since the gringos didn't ask the world for permission, the house was considered like a boil on the body of the earth, an absolutely spiritually dangerous place because no permission had been asked for or granted. They also pointed it in the wrong direction, the direction of death. But the combination of those two things, when people went by that model house, instead of examining it, they crossed themselves, meaning they were warding off the danger of this house, because their view is that the world has given us all of this richness for which we owe. It's like not original sin, it's original debt. That the world gives us for free. Plants, food, things out of nothing, out of a little seed, it gives us this wonderful corn plant. So what are we doing to pay back? And they believe the ultimate payback is when you die and go back into the earth. That's your last payment. But periodically, you should be paying in something that is considered, I guess you'd say, God currency. And blood is one of those God currencies. And then analogs of blood, like tree sap. They make an incense out of the sap of the red pine. And they get sawdust and mix it with the resin and make it into little balls. And when you see them at their altars, it's this big flame and stuff. What they're burning is tree blood. They're offering an essence, a life essence, as what the gods consume. They like life essence. They like flowers for the smell. They like light. They like the smell of food. On the Day of the Dead, you see the Mexicans going to the graveyard and putting food there, the ancestors aren't eating the food. In fact, when they're done, they take the food home and, generally speaking, they eat it themselves. What they're doing is offering the essence of the food. Its smell, its beauty, it's all of the non-tangible qualities that are the essence of life. So they like to offer life essence. And the deer, in the past, the ideal way of hunting a deer for the Maya, deer no longer exist in the highlands because they've all been eaten up. But when there were deer around, the ideal hunter of a deer does not kill the deer. He captures the deer. Then you bring the deer back and you put him in a corral, tie him up and put him in a corral, and you feed him lots of corn. And you wait for the next ceremonial day. And that's when you offer the blood of the deer, and then you eat the rest. And this, you see this going way back in Mesoamerican culture. The deer was essentially the substitute for human sacrifice. So deer blood was nearly as good as human blood for its power as a valuable offering. So the deer becomes like a living offering to the gods. And that makes the deer day an important day. They say the deer day is one that's hard to get on top of, but if you can ride the deer, it'll take you a long, long way because it's powerful. So that's the deer day. And likewise, there are 20 days. Let's see. I always start with the bird day because that's the first one that my teacher taught me. Tzikin and Achmak, the day of the ancestors. Noch, the day for thinking and reflection, mental activities. Tihash, crazy day where things are all mixed up. Kawuk, the day of earthquake and thunder, and also deep inner psychological states. Akpu, the day of the hunter, blowgunner, day of ambush, things that are not expected happening. Get ready for the unexpected. Akpu Imosh. Imosh is a day when you mix things up. It's the day of the star. It has a lot of different meaning. Imosh. Yuck. The day of wind. The wind day, that's a day where things change abruptly, like the changing of winds. It's a good day for prayers, song, poetry, anything that generates air, singing. Akbal, the night day, the day I was born on. It's sort of the dark before dawn, sort of looking in the darkness to see light. It's associated with night, with dreams. Dreams are very important in the Maya. In fact, they believe dreams are more honest than our waking state. Because in our waking state, everybody's Englishing their representation of reality according to their own interests, right? So it never is really how it is. When we experience it, we always experience it with our own bias. But in the dream, you're not in the driver's seat. In the dream, the non-ordinary world is telling us things whether we like it or not. And they think that that's more honest than our waking world. So the first thing they would say in the morning to me when I woke up is not, good morning. Usually it was, what was your dream? And if I had a strong dream, you ever had those dreams where like, it's as though they put a stronger light bulb in the dream projector and the dream is really bright, really well illuminated? In the dream literature, they're called bright dreams, and they appear all over the place in all different cultures. Well, for them, if you have a bright dream, they just take you right up to the diviner and sit you down and say, okay, tell me about the dream, and we're going to divine and figure out what's happening. One day that happened to me, and they decided not to go to the market. It's the result of my dream. And as it turns out, there was something horrible that happened in the market, so it was like a really good thing. But my point is that they are extremely interested in the night world of dreams, because for them it's a place, it's also where the unborn and the ancestors live, it's where timelessness is. It's a world as filled with characters as the waking world, maybe more. So there's Akubal, and then there's Kat, which is the net day, the day of our burdens and our responsibilities. So you better do your responsibilities on the net day. Khan is the snake day. It's really easy to get angry on snake days, but it's also a day where you can rise up and be bravo, be strong when you need to be. Snake power. Let's see. Kame is the day of death, which is a good day for transformation, changing things. Good day to leave or to arrive somewhere. Kame, and then Kiach, we're to deer. We talked about deer. Anil, the day of harvest or yellowness. Anil, Toch, the day of payment. To get paid or to pay others. Good day to pay your bills. And Tsi, dog. We talked about dog. And we're back to Bats, monkey. A, which is the day of your fortune or your path, your destiny. Good day to go to the dentist as well. Ach is the day of the home, the house. Fix up, clean up your house, straighten up your relations with your family. And then Ish, the last day, which is the day of the world. It's the Jaguar day. And that's the day when we are supposed to be tuned into the world. Pay attention to the world on the Ish day. So that is a very brief going through the 20 days, but you can see how all of them have different qualities and characteristics. And if you lived in this world, you would be paying attention to different things depending on the day. Now we have a little of that. We have TGIF, right? Thank God it's Friday. The idea that Friday has some characteristics that are unlike Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday, but it's pretty weak in our society. For them, these different days have utterly different kinds of personalities. So, and in divination, and then I'll stop there. When I divine, I use those days to tell to tell a future. I'm just going to give a very brief example, which, So today's the dog day, six dogs. So if I had a client come in and say, let's say they'd say, well, I'm having trouble getting my husband up in the morning to go out in the cornfield. And so I would make my little prayer that the beings answer this person's question, and I'd tell who the person was and maybe their parents and a few other relatives, just so that they're well identified to the world who I'm talking about. And then I would take a technically random handful, and that's very important, the randomness of these little seeds out, and then I would group them in groups of 4. And each of these 4 beings represents a day. Because like the human body, the day has 4 corners. Can anyone guess what the 4 corners of the day are?
Feet, hands.
Nope. 6 in the morning, noon, 6 in the evening, and midnight. Those are the corners of the day. And they're easy to identify because corner 1, the sun comes out over the horizon. Corner 2, it's at zenith. Corner 3, it goes down, and then you have to sort of approximate corner 4. But you got 3 out of the 4 already charted out. So like everything else, time has its corners. Oops. Okay. So it's come out in complete days because it came out in 4. Right. So the first thing I know when it comes out at 4, it's telling me my bundle is happy to read today because it's come out in the 4. But let us see what day it comes out on. If this is dog day, 6 tsi, 7 bats, 8 a, 9 ach, 10 ish, 11 tzikin, 12 achmak, 13 noch. So the first thing, noch is the thinking day. But 13 is very old, so it suggests thinking about something that happened long ago, or thinking about something of the ancestors or well in the past. So maybe the husband didn't get up in the morning because his parents didn't get him up early in the morning, didn't give him that habit. Or for us, we're talking about very primordial things here. If this were a divination for us, we're talking about thinking about things that are very ancient, like how we count numbers, how we understand space. But I don't do that once in a divination, I do it 4 times. So that's the first. So if this is 13 noch, the next one noch is tihash. What number will it be with tihash? 1, not 14, because we start back at 1. So 1 tihash, 2 kawuk, 3 achpu, 4 imosh, 5 ilk, 6 akbal, 7 kat, 8 kan. So in the case of the lazy husband, there's a problem about Khan is the snake day, and 8 is as high as it gets. So there's some marital conflict here. There's some anger, unresolved, present and strong anger to be dealt with. Khan. And then 9, Khan Kameh, 10, Kech, 11, Kanil, 12, Toch, 13, Tzi, 1, Bats, 2 a, 3 ach. Ach is the day of the house, and 3 would be it's new, but 3 is a representation of the hearthstones, which is where women spend a lot of time. So maybe the guy's complaining about how she manages the household, right? You see how the logic of these things? Okay. So I was at 3. Of course. 4 ish, 5 tkin, 6 achmak, 7 noch, 8 tihash, 9 kawuk, 10 achpu, 11 imosh. And that emosh is the day of things getting all mixed up. So as a result of this, your household is disorganized, and he's protesting against what you're doing because by not getting up early and going out to farm. That's made very simple, but that's sort of how the divination works. It's always 4. I end up in 4 days, and I combine the 4 days and their numbers, and that creates a meaning. And I can,
So you pulled a random group of beans out,
Yes.
and then you divided them into groups of 4?
Yes,
But
exactly.
what if it wasn't an even number?
If it's not an even number, that's a good question. If it's 3, then I have to go 2 and 1, and that is kind of a very negative. So if someone just asked a yes or no question, that would be a no, and that would be even a stronger no, just 1. And 4 would be a yes. Or if somebody came, I had this happen once, and asked questions they were really disingenuous questions. They were just testing me because they were not open to this. It came out 23 times in a row as 1. And the diviner said, somebody here is here in bad faith. She was busted. So yeah. So if it were just a yes or no question, 2 is a weak yes, 4 is a strong yes. 2 and 1 is a weak no, just 1 is a strong no. And sometimes if it keeps coming out 1 by itself, it may mean my beans are not interested in reading today. You know, somebody is creeping them out. Like I say, I kept asking my teacher, well, do I need to believe all of this stuff? And he said, no. Just do the work. Just do the work. So I just do the work and explain it.
Question.
Yes.
So after you explained it, and what's the outcome? Or
What is the outcome?
I mean,
Well, then I would tell the woman to go and clean up her kitchen, and tell her husband that the diviner said if she cleans up her kitchen, she can kick him out of his bed early in the morning. And that would usually happen. Now, sometimes this is done for healing purposes, not just sort of behavioral concerns, or should I sell my pig tomorrow at the market? Sometimes people have mysterious maladies that all of the Western doctoring or herbal doctoring or massage doctoring has not helped with. And that's considered to be a spiritual problem, because Mayas believe that illness has 4 corners, like everything else. It has the material corner, you know, your biology, but it also has your psychology. It also has your sociology. That is to say, your relationships to other significant people. And it also has spirituality. So there are 4 dimensions of health. And a lot of illness requires addressing all 4 of those. Right? One day, while I was off in the hills, a long way from where I was living, a good 10-mile walk, but I was doing a little archaeological survey on the side because I was interested. No one had ever done any archaeology of that area. And I was up looking at this odd stone, and a man came up to me and he said, I know you. You're the apprentice to that Chuchkao, that daykeeper down in the valley. And I said, busted. Yeah. Remember, this is a secret thing in those days. So the fact that he knew told me he must be in the system. He must be a costumbrista, not an evangelical or somebody else. So I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, then you know something about healing. And I said, well, yeah, I've been initiated. He said, well, I have a very sick daughter at my house. Come with me. And he grabbed me strongly by the hand and took me to his house, which was a couple miles away. And there was a girl in the bed, not doing well, had a fever. So I said, okay, I have to get into the mindset of my teacher, right? So I said, okay, first, the material. I need you to go get some pericon, tagetes lucida. It's sometimes called Mexican marigold or Mexican tarragon. It's a plant that, like willow, will lower your fever. It just does so more slowly, and it doesn't upset the stomach. So essentially, I sent someone off to get a natural aspirin, and which I had been treated with many times. So that was the first one. And then the second one, I had them get together the candles and the incense to put up at the altar for the spiritual side of things. And then I interviewed the relatives to find out who was fighting with her. And there was a couple people who'd had bad words with her. And I made them, I made a bed of flowers between the altar and the bed, and I made them all walk on it on their knees while I hit them with a stick. Not very hard, but essentially a ritual penitence for having had bad words with a now sick child. And she got to watch all of that happen. And then at the psychological level, I talked with I talked a little with her, and I came out and said, time to sacrifice a chicken. We're going to substitute her, and all of her thoughts are going to go into the chicken, and we're going to sacrifice the chicken, and then we're going to eat the chicken. And so they got a chicken, and we sacrificed it, and she told all the things that her kind of hang-ups with the family to the chicken. We killed the chicken, we bled the chicken, and they ate the chicken. And she got to eat the best parts of the chicken. So she also got essentially chicken soup. And she got better. Can I say, I was very inherently uncomfortable because as an outsider and as an anthropologist being asked to heal somebody in a traditional way, but I was kind of cornered. And, the combination of medicine, food, psychological relief, sociological relief, and spiritual expenditure for your case combined to alleviate what was bothering her. And I came back a few days later and she was perfectly fine. But had I had my bundle there, I might have divined what was the problem. And that would have made it a lot easier to do all the things that I did than doing them without the bundle. You see why? Because I could appeal to an objective third party. Said, I don't know, but it's saying you got to kill a chicken. And so the table, in a sense, the divination, because it's not controlled by me. The diviner never controls the outcome. And that's why it's holy. For in the Maya, the random is the holy. During Holy Week, the old men go out and they gamble. They roll dice. Now, they never put much money in it. And they don't care who wins. The point is, you're calling God because you're introducing the random. Not something that we can control. Because if we don't control something, well, who does control it? For them, there's no notion of scientific randomness or what do we call it? Serendipity? Or happy accident. There are no accidents in this worldview. There is meaning to all things. And the question is, if we didn't do it, and if nobody else, no person did it, then it must be the hand of higher powers. And in a sense, the table calls the higher power to tell people things rather than humans. So rather than a therapist who's trying to figure out what's the psychological problem here, I let the table do the work. And I just administer the prescription. So, and since randomization often gets us outside of our rational minds, outside of the obvious, and to think, gee, we never thought of that, is a problem. Because it's relative to us, it's random. So is it magical or is it just randomizing to get out of our rational minds? The science is not all in on this question. But my personal experience, my divinations work way more often than they don't work. So I don't stop doing them. Now, I don't hang out my shingle. I haven't put on the internet, Dr. Earle available for divinations. But part of that is, and I don't know if we should share this with the internet, we're not supposed to turn anybody down. Right? You can't be picky about who you're going to have as a client. Why? Because I didn't earn this. I earned my PhD. Took a lot of work to get it. I worked very hard to get it. I didn't work very hard to get this because they told me I had to learn this. And they made me learn it. And yeah, it was hard to learn the days and the Mayan language and all those things. But there's nothing special about me where I earned this. This was, according to the Mayas, I was born with this ability. And certain people are born with that ability. And what do the Maya do? They just sniff them out. And they sniffed me out. I did not focus in my studies on Mayan divination. That was not, I don't think it was even mentioned in my dissertation. But they were absolutely convinced that this was my calling, and so here I am, doing just what my teacher told me to do. Are there questions? I know, it's a lot of stuff, and it's weird, but there you are. I should say, these people have been watching this 20-day cycle for 3,000 years, maybe longer. So maybe they do have some insights into the character of time.
Also, when you have a question, when you go for a divination, you don't even have to understand that.
No.
You just ask the question.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
beings.
Right, yeah.
You don't have to
know all of the background. And of course, the Mayas already intuitively know it because it's their own culture. They know when a dream needs divining. Yes?
I see on your right have crystal, on the left have
Little figures and stones. These are what are called the witnesses. So when I do a divination, I have these objects as witnesses. And there are things that during my 260-day initiation, because initiation is like rebirth, you get regestated. You have a starting day and your ending day, which are the same day, and that's your round of initiation. Anything that you find while you're going to like shrines, to altars, pilgrimages, anything that you're doing that's a spiritual activity, anything you find there that's of certain characteristics, like a crystal, like a stone, like a rock in a funny shape, that goes into your bundle. And then occasionally afterwards, if you find something in your life that also is strange and out of place. I found the other day, where was it? Out in Brownsville, a Brazilian coin. And I'm going like, and it was like going, hi, it was like waving to me and it was just on the ground. I'm going, this one goes in the bundle. So they're my witnesses. They keep me honest because they've watched my path all along. And the Mayas also think of crystals as having little fissures in them. Do you ever see little rainbow reflections in a crystal? Well, that rainbow for them is a window into the interior of someone. So they'll put the crystal up to you and look and see what color it is and read that. But that's a whole other story about how they use crystals. So yeah, and at the head I have this is my tzitzimit. He's kind of like the spirit owner of my bundle. And I call him tzitzimit. And then I have the wakash, my cow. He's my animal companion to my tzitzimit. And then I have the world cross in a form of a piece of coral. And that's the cosmic tree that they view is in the middle of the spirit world, whose branches go up into the heaven and whose roots go down into the holy earth. So he's like my anchor into the holy world and the sky. Because I'm, as my teacher once said, I'm like carne asada in a tortilla. Above me is the heavens, and below me is the sacred earth, and we are all in the middle of that taco. So, yes.
I was curious about the divination thing.
Mm-hmm.
They saw that you had that quality. Did it have any basis that you noticed for it?
No, not at all.
And was it another divinator who saw that quality in you?
When I challenged my teacher, who I was living with, I would say, yes, well, I've helped you with this and I've helped you with that, but this isn't a way to pay me back, things like that. He'd say, it's not what I want. He said, not what you want and not what I want. Well, then who is it that wants it? And he says, the world wants this. And I said, well, how do you know the world wants this? Can we get a second opinion? Right? He went around to all the other shamans in the village, and they came up with the same outcome. And I said, yeah, but they know you and they know me. And so, I was always like suspicious. And he said, okay, this is going to cost you, but we'll go to a higher shaman in a different village who doesn't know you because he doesn't know me. And it's going to be a long walk, and you're going to probably spend $10, which is a huge amount for them. And I went, and it was in the midnight, and the guy was a possession shaman, which means that he leaves himself and gets possessed by what they call a world entity from the world. And the guy said something, my quiche wasn't that good at the time. He said something really fast. But by that time, I was really freaked out because I'd already heard him get possessed by my teacher's deceased mother, who I knew when she was alive. That was freaky. But then he came to me and he said something in quiche really fast, and everybody laughed. And I thought, well, I guess I'm off the hook, because this is not an environment in which there's a lot of laughter. And there were like 20 other clients there. So on the way home, when they finally got over their laughter, they finally said, he said, if you have a dog in your house and he doesn't know who your friends are, he'll bite anybody. And then they all laughed again. This is my humor. So I was the dog, right? Because dogs are sort of like humans, but they don't know all the social rules. And that they had to teach me this because otherwise I'm a spiritual loose cannon and could end up whammying somebody without knowing it. That was the answer. So after that, and I'd spend $10 after all. I was screwed. I had to learn this.
So can I add to that?
Yeah.
For them, then, is being a shaman the same as being a divinator?
Well, no, divining is one form of shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
There are more forms. There's possession shamanism, and many of them most of them are also diviners, but it's something more. It's a higher level. Mm-hmm. And then there are also considered shamans, bone setters. People who know how to set bones are also considered shamans, but it's a different tradition. And there are ilbal crystal seers. They're considered shamans. Some of them just do crystals. And there may be more, but those are the ones I was exposed to. And they considered midwifery and the work in the sweat as sort of like a kind of shamanism too, but it's mostly done by women because women aren't really comfortable with men massaging their uteruses. So it's mostly women.
Well, I suppose shamans, because they are spiritual figure, their role is to help people,
Yes.
to serve.
Yes.
Rather than for themselves.
Yes, it's considered a burden. It's considered a chore you must take on, and you'll probably not benefit much from it, at least materially, because you have to take all people, and you can't accept money. People can give you a chicken or some sort of gift, like the gift jar in a donation situation, but you're not supposed to say, well, a yes or no that'd be $5, and a full divination, that would be $25. You're not supposed to do that because you didn't earn it. It was your luck. It was your destiny. It was your fortune to do that. So you have to do it when people express a need. Now, of course, this rule is a lot easier in a small town where everybody knows each other than, say, on the internet. But them's the rules, and that's why I have not been very public about knowing this and doing this. Imagine on the internet, free Mayan shaman divination. Oh my God.
So my question for you, how is it like for you to live with a gift, which you have learned, and that to serve?
What is
you
it?
know that then you know, say there is a system and you know the wisdom of it,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how to predict the past, or know the past, know the present, and maybe predict the future.
Mm-hmm. How is it for me?
For you?
Well, I don't usually read about myself. That's kind of scary to me. But to help other people, to the degree I've been able to help other people, it's been wonderful. The Hopi potter who was able to subsequently go back to making pots, which was the basis of her family's income, that was a really important divination for me to do. But I don't see, how to put this, as a shaman, I'm at my best when I'm not there, when I'm empty, when I'm just doing the work. I'm like the hat you hang on the hat rack on the way in. There's my ego is, and all that's there. I'm just doing what I'm taught and reading the outcome. And then when I come out of it and I'm back to myself, go, well, how was it? How did I do? But I'm not really, it's not like I'm not showing off. So I don't know how I would show off doing this. I'm doing what my teacher taught me to do because he told me I better do it or things could get bad for me by not picking up my cargo, my obligation. So the only thing I was able to do is not advertise. That was my only power in terms of not spending every waking hour of my day doing this all the time. So, and apropos of that, of course, since I've exposed you to it, if there were one of you that wanted an answer to a pressing question, my only rules are they have to be important questions. They have to be things you don't already know the answer to or are already decided about. You just want a second opinion. They have to be things you really are on the fence about or uncertain about or confused about or don't know whether to go this way or that way about. And is there anything else? It has to be something important and you have to take this seriously, that you're not coming here to play. Those are the only rules. So, but if you wanted to give me a chicken, that's fine, but not required. So I should say in closing, Ukushka ukushileo, shkutka shkutuleo, matios chawe chire Dios, heart of heaven, heart of earth, four corners heaven, four corners earth. Thank you for this day 6 dog, Wakitse, for giving me this opportunity to share my shiny path, my crystal path, with others who are sympathetic to my burden. And I thank my bundle for being in a good mood and giving me all fours, and for all of your hearts being open to the wisdom of the Maya and the delight of the moment. Aho.